This here is Boom Studios' Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic, issue 27. We begin in Dracon's world, where sentries are trying to interrogate the leader of the Coinless. A red sentry tells the others to leave it to him. As he enters the room, the leader asks how it's gonna go. The red helmet comes off the sentry to reveal Skull, who has been working undercover, which was established in the first story arc. I'm still amazed how Skull has essentially become an undercover agent for the Coinless. In the Rangers' own world, Lauren explains to the Mighty Morphin team what happened back at the Shiba house. And I love how these comics keep coming up with new things like this room in the command center. It certainly feels more homely. Jen informs everyone that Dracon's forces are invading everywhere. But then again, we already know that, as the 2018 annual was full of stories focusing on other Ranger teams battling Dracon. Zordon begins a transmission across the grid with the aid of Jen's transportal technology. He warns everyone of Dracon's forces and tells all the Power Rangers to come to each other's aid, protect their worlds, themselves, and their morphers. In this spread we can see some things that were seen in the annual already, like the Space Rangers and SPD teams taking on Dracon's forces. But there are other teams as well, such as Dino Thunder, who were defeated in the Free Comic Book Day special, Galaxy, Ninja Steel, Dino Charge, Lightspeed Rescue, and Jungle Fury. After the end of Zordon's transmission, someone responds immediately. It's Dr. K from RPM's world. The RPM Rangers coped with the Dragon Cannons because the Green Ranger managed to recover one for Dr. K to reverse engineer, something that was shown in the annual. But then the transmission with Dr. K is cut off as she is explaining how to counteract the effect of the Dragon Cannons. And then there's yet another communication. This time it's from the Coinless. Their base is gone, but they think they found a way to defeat Dracon. The Rangers are sent the coordinates, but they also want to help the other Rangers who are under attack. The only option then is to split into teams. Billy, Zack and Trini are heading to the Coinless's coordinates in Dracon's world. Kimberly and Jen are to round up the Rangers they can find, whilst Lauren and Jason head to Corinth to find Dr. K. And so the Rangers teleport out across the grid. This page I like. Dracon sits in his chair watching the action on screens in front of him, much like the live-action trailer that was used to promote Shattered Grid. Another reference to the annual here in terms of the Zeo storyline. Dracon is looking at the red Zeonizer crystal. So he took Adam's Zeonizer in the annual, but he also took Tommy's crystal. It makes sense. Before he killed Tommy a second time, he must have taken it from him by force. This crystal means nothing to Dracon, so he tells Finster 5 to add it to the pile with the others. Ninja is ready for the next power transfer to Dracon, but processing so many power signatures at once will be unpleasant. However, Dracon doesn't mind, although something is bugging him. We learn that he spent considerable time in Zeo's world, gaining more insight on the Rangers there, but he discovered the Zeo team also looked up to Tommy, which he absolutely hates because there's nothing to like about Tommy. Suddenly, they're interrupted by a report that Dr. K made the breakthrough, so the Dragon Cannons have no effect on the RPM Rangers. Again, a reference to the annual because Dracon tried recruiting Dr. K. He said he will go to Corinth himself after the power transfer. Jason and Lauren arrive in RPM's world. They're quite a way out from Corinth, so Jason summons his Dinozord, which is teleported in. More originality from Boom Studios, as the Dinozord cockpit now has two seats right next to each other. A change up from the cockpits depicted in the first arc, and of course the TV series. Lauren tells Jason she's been preparing to be a Power Ranger her whole life. It's something we knew from the TV series, but puts things into perspective. Lauren trained her entire life, whereas Jason was only picked in his teenage years to become a Power Ranger. It's revealed that the Samurai Rangers defeated Master Xandred and the Nylok, like the TV series. However, the Nylok returned, so Mentor G and Jaden went undercover to investigate in this universe. There's an understanding between the two Rangers here, as Jason blames himself for Tommy's death. Lauren tells Jason they need to focus on the mission as there's too much at stake. Jason says it's usually what he says, but that makes him worry. Lauren tells him worrying doesn't help the other Rangers, so for the time being, she's choosing not to worry. So it's actually good seeing how these two leaders cope, bouncing off each other. Zack, Billy and Trini arrive at the coordinates they were given. It turns out they arrived at what used to be the youth centre as Billy holds up the juice bar sign. The Coinless are there to meet the Rangers. I find it funny how these guys have real weapons and this member has a gun modelled after a blade blaster. Future Trini hugs Billy, which is a nice reminder of their connection in the first arc because alternate Billy was killed. We learn that after the Rangers left the Coinless, the war continued with Scorpina leading the charge. So that's what happened to Scorpina. It's always bugged me how we never got to find out what happened to her. Skull tells the Rangers about his undercover work, how he got promoted to a Red Sentry by playing the right politics. He tells the Rangers Drakon has Ninja from their world. Trini asks what a Ninja is. Of course, she has no idea because in the TV series, Ninja came after Trini's departure. Future Zack explains to the Rangers that they've not met him yet, and that Ninja created the power coins. But now, Drakon has Ninja under mind control. If they can save Ninja, they can beat Drakon. Back in RPM's world, the RPM Rangers are still fighting Drakon sentries, now with the samurai powers added, just like in the annual. Drakon's forces are surprised by loud sounds, which turns out to be the Tyrannosaurus Dinozord. As the sentries open fire on the Zord, the Tyrannosaurus just tail whips them away, forcing Drakon's sentries to fall back. That was fun to see. Jason and Lauren exit the Tyrannosaurus as the RPM Rangers wonder who they are. Jason says there's no time for introductions and wants to take Dr. K back with him to his dimension. But then the Rangers realise that might be a problem, as they notice in the distance more of Drakon's forces are approaching. And this time, Drakon has evil Rangers to back him up, which was a bit of a surprise. We see some A-Squad Rangers from SPD, Psycho Rangers from Space, and Korag from Mystic Force. So that's a good place to end this issue, as we have to find out if these are the real deal next time, or if these powers were transferred over to Drakon's army. Also, Drakon's suit is still changing, and it's fun to see how it keeps evolving with each power he assimilates. Now, onto Blue Centurion and Ninja. The Mutant Rangers hand over an artifact to Monsieur Muster, who is wearing elements of Power Rangers suits on him. I wonder what the story is behind that. The artifact given to him is Rita Repulsa's telescope. He adds that to the rest of his collection, which includes the Power Sword and Saber. If this indeed does tie in with Shattered Grid, does this mean Saber gets his head back eventually, or is this a different Saber? Anyway, Muster suddenly cuts the mutants down into pieces, confirming they were putties. But he didn't destroy them, merely remolded them, as he handed them the Badges of Darkness, again. Only this time, they're terrible Turbo Rangers. Another interesting approach from Boom Studios, taking something of old and updating it. On the whole, this issue was quite enjoyable. The main Shattered Grid story is progressing, and I like how Boom Studios is pulling all their comics together for this crossover. I like how the Rangers have accepted that Tommy's dead, so we don't need to dwell too much on that anymore. It's great to see how the Mighty Morphin team are interacting with the other teams as they're fighting different battles with different powers, but the goals are the same. I enjoyed the Blue Centurion story this time round because I think it's interesting how this villain is collecting old Rangers and villains' items for his collection. I'd like to know why he's wearing elements of Ranger suits in a future issue, and I hope we get to know why the Mighty Morphin mutants were remoulded into terrible Turbo Rangers.